Hey guys, welcome back to Urban Rhino Tutorials. On this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do a weaving that is inspired by the Mayan Indians. Before I get started, I want to point out a few things. So one, a Spanish teacher in the high school I teach at asked me to help her with this, and so I'm making the tutorial for her class. This is the first time I'm doing this particular type of weaving, so I'm sure that there are going to be some things that you may have a better way of doing it. If so, you can certainly comment below and offer that suggestion. I might change something in the middle of it, so just bear with me. Like I said, this is a tutorial for those students. You're welcome to watch and follow along if you want, but please keep in mind that I'm doing this for the first time as well. So let's get started. To begin, she gave me some examples of some Mayan weaving different techniques, which are these here. And I took the three that I thought the students could, translate the best and made them into templates. And I just used Photoshop to make these, or you could use Illustrator. But so this one's the diamond pattern, which would kind of go off of this one here. Or we have this one, like this blue, black and white one. And then this kind of zigzag pattern. So for this tutorial, I am going to show you how to do the diamond pattern. And to begin, basically what we're gonna do is create an entire woven piece out of the background color. So I'm gonna use this kind of plum color and create an entire woven section, and then we will go back and put these little parts on top, so the diamonds, and I'll show you how to do that after we get the base on. So to begin, you just need to choose what you want your background color to be. So like I said, I'm going to use this one, and I am going to begin with tying this. You can either just tie it around the corner like that, or you can actually put it through the hole. I think it's just as easy to just tie it. And you want to make sure that you knot it probably 3 times just to make sure it's staying really well. Like that. I'm going to trim off some of the extra, and then I'm going to use a little piece of tape just to kind of hold it in place so it's not attempting to slide. This little loom that I have clearly is very cheap. I buy this type of stuff in bulk, and obviously since I'm teaching high school, we try to keep supply costs down when we can, so it serves its purpose, and that's all that matters. So I'm going to tape this little part down, just again, that will just help keep this from sliding. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to kind of unravel some of this here, unroll it from the ball here. And we're going to begin wrapping the yarn around several times. Let me get all of it out of the way here. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to go right around like this. And we are going to do this about 30 times. Okay. So again, just continuing around about 30 times. I can scoot them in. I've got about 6 wraps on here right now. So I'm going to speed this up and finish this up. And when I come back here in just a second, you'll see all the wraps on. Okay, so I have it wrapped on here about 25-30 times, just enough so that they're spaced about 1/4 of an inch apart. You don't have to perfectly measure them, although with this particular loom you could if you wanted, because there is a ruler on it, but that should be sufficient. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to cut so that I have a strand here, and I'm going to tie it in place on this last little spot here, just like I did originally. So I'm just tying it in a knot right here. If you're struggling with making the knot, you could always just tape it down. Just make sure that you tape it really well so it doesn't come loose. You want these strands, when you're running your vertical strands like this, you want to make sure that they're pulled pretty tight too. If they're really loose, when you start the weaving process, it's going to, you're gonna have a hard time. Okay, so again, I just trimmed this off. I'll tape it down just so it stays kind of out of my way. Like that. All right, so a couple things. One, you might notice that this is double-sided. So obviously, because I was wrapping around, we have the strings underneath. So you can do one of two things. You can utilize those strings and weave them in, or you can ignore that back layer of strings and just focus on this top layer. So that is completely up to you. Kind of depends on how thick your yarn is, because this yarn is a lot thinner. You know, it might work to your benefit to use it as well. Again, up to you. We are going to use it because, again, the string is thin. So to begin, you need something that's going to guide you through the strings. It's going to be really hard to try to just do that with your hands. So easy way is just to use a popsicle stick. And I'm still going to be working with my same color because I want to get, you know, my base down first. So I'm just going to tape, and I would say tie it, but a lot of times when you tie it, it just slides off of the little popsicle stick. So we're gonna tape it. Maybe if the tape will cooperate. There we go. So I'm gonna tape the end of the yarn onto the popsicle stick. Just enough so that it stays, you know, pretty good like that. Okay, and then from here, you need to pull out a good amount of the yarn. So unwind it. The more you're able to pull out of here, the better. So I'm gonna go for about 30 or so feet. You don't want to only pull out a little bit and then have to keep tying on more. Okay, so now that I've got a good amount, I'm going to cut it off of the ball of yarn. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take the end that I just cut off and I'm going to tie it, and I'm gonna go the opposite side of where I tied up here. No real reason other than that's just where I'm going. So I'm going to lift up my very first strand, and I'm just tying the yarn directly on. Make sure you do at least a double knot. And then again, tape your little end out of the way. Just like that. So now we are ready to begin the weaving process. This is going to take a significant amount of time, especially getting the base on. Once you get that first, bottom layer of color, essentially, then doing the design itself really doesn't take all that long. So we're gonna do just a simple, over under technique. And like I said, I am going to utilize those strings in the back as well. So what I'm gonna do, I'm tied onto the first one. So I'm gonna go under my first string, over the next one, under, over. So you can see, if you can see them here, I'll kind of zoom in. I am alternating over, under, and I'm picking up the ones from the bottom as well. And even though I want to start up here, it's okay to do it down here. It's a little easier to start here, and then we'll push it up into place. So over, under. I'm doing this with every string. And I'm starting to pull it a little bit just to kind of get it out of the way. So still going over, under. And so we're under, making sure I'm not missing any here. Over, under. Once you get the first couple rows done, it will go much faster because your strands will kind of be in place. But it does take a minute, with the first few rows. You don't want to push your little popsicle stick through too far either, too quickly, or you're going to go past your rows. So I'm just using my fingers here and kind of pushing the strands up into place as I'm using my other hand to scoot this little popsicle stick along. Okay, we're getting there. And I promise, like I said, once you get through the first few rows, it will go much faster. Okay. And now, all right, so now that we are to the last one, you can pull, and you have to pull your entire long batch of thread or of yarn through. Obviously, if you use thicker thread, I keep saying thread, if you use thicker yarn, this is going to go faster. It might not be a bad idea to use thicker for the base, and then when you get to the detail part, if you did the thinner thread, thinner yarn, most of my projects we work with thread, so I'm so used to saying that, then that will help with the details because it'll be skinnier. think you guys are gonna have a lot of respect for people who do this when you're done, because you will see how extremely time consuming it is. So, and you don't have to make your yarn as long as I did to start. You're just gonna have to tie a bunch on or more frequently. I prefer to try to avoid doing that as much as possible. But then again, it makes for having to pull this string through, you know, that part takes a lot longer, so. All right, almost there. And then we repeat back the opposite way. So now that I am through this strand, I don't want to pull it too tight yet. I want to push it up into place as I'm pulling. And what that has done is that has brought that bottom layer of the strings of the yarn up, and when I get the next row on, it's going to really put them you know, set in place. So you'll be able to go in and out a lot faster with these. You want to leave about a ½ inch from the inside part of your frame of the loom, about a ½ inch. Just leave it, you know, don't push your yarn up into that space. What will happen is when we're done, we will trim off all of these, and you're going to tie them, either tie them in place so that they stay, or if you want to use a dowel, you can tie them around the dowel, and you would put one on the top and one on the bottom. That way it can hang from the dowels like that. So now that I have this side done, I'm going to work my way back the opposite way. And because I started with this first one, my string is over it. I want to go under it this time. And then I want to go over. I want to make sure that I'm going the right way. So this is over that one, this is under, now we're over, under. So you definitely, like I said, you want to make sure you're doing the opposite of what you did previously. So if on this particular strand right here, if I went over it last time, I should be going under it right now, which I am. Okay, working our way through. Over, under, over, under. You can see even this second row already has gone faster, and the third will be even faster than that. Okay, so now the fun part of pulling it all through. So basically that is the whole process of putting the base, like the whole background layer down. And so rather than have you watch me do this same tedious thing for a couple of hours, I will finish the base part up, and then I'll show you what you do when you get near the end. And then we will pick up with how to actually put your design on there. So I'm going to finish pulling this through and finishing up the rows and when I return, we will move on to the design. Okay, so I have as much completed as I wanted to do. I just wanted to make sure that I had essentially like a square, so that as long as the length of it was equal to the width. That's what I was shooting for. Because I'm gonna do a diamond, I kind of wanted to keep it a square. You will probably notice that I switched colors. So I went from this kind of more plum color to the more royal purple. And the reason I did that is because I switched the actual type of yarn I was using. So up here, I was using a very, very thin yarn, and I'm not gonna lie, this is about 5 hours worth of weaving, which is insanity. So it would have taken probably 20 or 30 hours to complete the whole thing, which is nuts. No one has that kind of time. Maybe you do, and by all means, if you want to, you can certainly do that. I am gonna stick with the smaller yarn to do the pattern on top, or the design, but I switched to a thicker yarn to carry on. I didn't have the right color here. I wasn't gonna go buy it because, like I said before, this is just a tutorial that I'm doing for students in the Spanish class here. So, you know, obviously nitpick it all you want. Yes, those colors don't match. How dare I? However, for the sake of the tutorial, it gets the point across. So I finished up. Couple things I want to point out. When you are doing the weaving and you get to the point where you need to add on more string, you just tie some more on, and you want to pull your little pieces to the back. So like when you tie more on, you want to kind of trim it, and then you just tuck them to the back as you're going. And then, you know, no one sees the back, so that part doesn't matter. So now that we are to this point, and another thing you might notice is I switched to this large eye needle. So this is purposely for like weaving and using a larger textile, larger strings like yarn. It's just, obviously you can continue with the popsicle stick, but because I'm a teacher and I was doing this kind of on a time crunch, this is quicker, so that's why we're doing that. I did recommend to the teacher that she uses these instead of the popsicle sticks as well. So now that I'm to the end, I'm just going to tie it off on the side. So I'm just making a knot to keep that yarn in place. And I'm gonna tie it like 3 times just to make sure it stays. Okay. And then I'm going to trim that. And now we are finally ready to begin the actual design. So I'm going to remove this yarn because I'm done with it. And I'm going to switch to a different color that I want to put on top. And remember, I am referencing, this is what she gave me, these kind of designs, and I'm doing the one that's a diamond, so kind of like this. And what I'm gonna do is let's start with the kind of gold, mustardy yellow color here. I'm gonna find the end of the string of the yarn. I'm gonna trim it because it's kind of frayed. And feed that through the eye of the needle, just like that. And I'm going to tie it so that it stays onto the needle. Usually just one tie is sufficient, just like that. And I don't need a ton of this, so I'm just going to do, I'm gonna start in the middle here. Actually, you can do one of 2 things. If you're pretty good at gauging, you know, where the center of this is, or you could use, if you have a loom like this with the ruler, you could certainly use that to determine the very center of your, you know, hopefully you've created a square. But if you're not very good at that, what you could do is start at the top and just kind of measure over, you know, use a measuring tape or whatever to find that. So you can either start in the middle to make your middle diamond and work your way out, or you could do the outside and work your way in. I am actually going to start with the outside and work my way in. So what I'm gonna do, I want to cut off about 3 or 4 feet of this. And I am going to tie this on to what looks like the middle of this. So this is a, this goes to 11 inches, but it starts at 1. So I need to find the center, which is about here, and I'm going to tie this string on. Another thing that you could do instead of just tying it on, if you don't want to see the knot, is you could, I'm going to show you here. You can tie it, poke it through and tie it that way. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So you could go, so again, here is my center. Going to run this through. I don't want to pull it all the way through. So just like that. And then I'm going to go straight back down right beside it and pull it. And then I can actually tie it back here, and it keeps the strings on the back so you don't see them. So just like that. And I'm just gonna trim this a little bit. So now my yarn is attached, my yellow yarn. And so my yellow yarn's attached, and I'm ready to begin with my design. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go straight up here through the middle, the very top, pull the yarn, and you can do this several different ways. So you can go through and pull it and kind of loop it around like this, or you can go over, under, over, under, over, under, you know, from the top to the bottom and just stitch it. Again, kind of your preference. This is what we're gonna do. So every about 1/4 of an inch, we're gonna poke through and pull it like this. And then we're gonna go back up like this. So you just want to pull this all the way through. So now, obviously, if I keep moving on, I'm gonna have these spaces in it, and I don't want that. So I'm gonna kind of backtrack, and I'm gonna go right where the yellow left off. Like this, okay? So you can see now that it's almost a continuous piece there. And then again, I'm going to skip forward a little bit, poke it through. So again, I'm leaving about 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to pull this, and then I'm going to backtrack and poke it in right at the end of where my last little stitch ended. Okay, and then again here, and you can see, you know, you're kind of just eyeballing it. If you did a more complicated design, you could lay your template underneath, and you would not actually be starting with a solid color, you know, as a base. You would, you know, like if you were doing this one, let me show you what I mean here. If you were doing this design, you would weave all of this one color, and then you would start your next color and weave this, and then move on. So you could actually lay the design under your vertical strands and do it that way. Whereas with this, you're kind of just hopefully using a little artistic ability and trying to do the best you can to make this diamond shape. So you could use a white fabric pencil. Usually a white colored pencil will work, and you can kind of sketch it on top first. A chalk marker, I probably wouldn't do a paint marker, but any of those things would help if you are not very good at, you know, if you're not artsy, if you're not good at drawing, that might help you. So you have that kind of as a little template or a guide to follow. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Let me get this little knot. And I'm just going to continue on with this yellow. Once I get all the way to this corner here, I'm gonna work my way down and over and back up. So I'm gonna go ahead and work on that, and then when I get that part finished, I will come back and show you how to start your next color. Okay, so as you can see, I've made quite a bit of progress here. I went ahead and filled in all the rows I wanted to do with the exception of one, so I can show you a couple things. You could certainly fill this in completely. I think it would look more complete, more finished if you did more diamonds in between to make it kind of more solid. Obviously, like I said, I'm doing this for just the sake of the tutorial for these students, so I'm not gonna do that. I just don't have the time. However, a few other things I want to point out. Just like when we do glass mosaics, the smaller you go, the less detailed you can get. The larger it is, the more detailed and the more exact things are going to be. So you might notice, you know, that the spacing is not great on these. You know, there's this space is bigger than this and so on. Some of them are, it's not perfectly straight, and that's just because of the size of it. If it was bigger, you could get those things a little more accurate. So what I want to show you is I've started with this blue color, and when you want to, if you want to use that same color but in a different space and you still have some of the yarn left, you can skip over. So you can see the back here where I've completed that blue, and I'm just going to do a row, I think between this pink and really pale green here. So I'm just going to poke it right here. And it doesn't matter, again, that it's stretching across because it's on the back side here. So now I can continue on with my next row. So I'm going to skip across like that. So I just went over one, and I'm gonna come up, and you kind of have to poke until you find the right spot. So I'm coming up from the bottom again, and back to where I ended that first little stitch, and I'm going to pull it, and I'm going to continue that around. Another thing that I want to show you is kind of what you do when you get to a corner or like the point of a diamond, how you'll turn that corner. So let me finish going through this. And when I finished that first diamond of the kind of gold color, I started the second one the exact same way I did the first one, so nothing different there. And because I had some of the gold color left over, I was able to do this same thing and stretch across and do this, the second to the very inner diamond there. It just saves you from having to cut a new piece and tie it onto the needle. Just saves a little bit of time. Okay, so once we get to this corner here, go ahead and finish that row. And then again, all you have to do is just stretch your yarn across. So I'm gonna poke it from the bottom up through here and then kind of back stitch. So I'm gonna go right here. Like that. And then I'm gonna go back to where that one ended. And you'll see now I'm on this next kind of line here of the diamond. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and finish this one up as well, this blue. And like I said, you could certainly, I was going the wrong way. You could certainly fill this in with a lot more diamonds. I'm gonna call it done for this example here, this tutorial. But what I'm gonna do when I return is I wanna show you how to finish the ends. So how to either tie off the ends or how to tie them onto a dowel if you choose to use a wood dowel. So like if you want to hang this kind of like a tapestry, you can certainly do that. The other thing that you could do if you wanted to is add some fringe. So for instance, if I did not want, if I didn't want this darker purple to look like a mistake, which, you know, it wasn't necessarily a mistake, I just, because I switched the colors and went to the bigger yarn and I didn't have that exact purple to match, it's obviously noticeable. So what I could do is make some of that same color, this more plum color, I could either put more here, which then would kind of throw this off, or you could put fringe at the bottom. So I could use this same color and put some fringe down here. That way it kind of mimics this color up here and it would tie it in more, and it would look like, really like you did that on purpose. Just something you could add even if you didn't, you know, have a separate color. You could certainly include the fringe. So let me go ahead and finish this little part up, and then when I return, I will show you how to finish the entire piece. All right, so I just finished the blue, and I'm just gonna turn it over to the back, and this is how you would finish any of your colors. You just pull it through and make a little knot. You wanna pull it through a couple times. So when you slide it under, if you take your yarn and kind of wrap it around the needle, when you pull it, it's going to make a knot. And then trim off the excess. Alrighty. So from here, the first thing we want to do is we'll start with the top, and I'm going to use this wood dowel, and that is what I'm going to tie these onto. So I'm sliding it through, and remember in the beginning we wrapped it around. So when I'm sliding it through, the strings that are in the back are underneath my dowel, and the strings that were on top of the loom are now on top of the dowel. So I'm just sliding it between those loops. Just like this. Okay, so from here, we have to start cutting all of it off. I'm removing the tape and cutting this off from over here. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna do a few at a time. So we're going to cut, scoot this down. Okay, so kind of backtracking. Because this side over here has more string, you might have a better time putting the dowel in on that side. So we're gonna do that instead. And these I'm just gonna tie off. So I'm gonna take 4 or 5 together, and I'm just going to make a knot. And when you pull these tight, you wanna make sure that you are gentle pulling them through. Because if you pull it real tight, you're gonna bunch up what you just were weaving, so you don't want that to happen. All right, so I have the bottom tied, and yes, it looks, you know, kind of messy right now, but when I go back and show you how to add fringe at the bottom, which is optional, but if you want to do that, it'll kind of clean that up. So before we get to that part, let's finish this last little bit here. So what we're gonna do is you can do one of two things to finish this. You can slide your dowel through like we did before, cut like this, cut these all off and tie them. And because these are longer on this end, you shouldn't have an issue tying them around that. Or what we're gonna do is tape all of these. So I'm gonna put some painter's tape like that. And some painter's tape on the back. And again, you certainly do not have to do it this way. This, I just think, will give you a cleaner look. We're gonna go right here so that I can have room to cut them. And I'm gonna go through and cut all these to do. So there's those. And then all right, so I'm going to center this and put a little bit of hot glue like that, and I'm just going to turn it a little bit so that it kind of dries. Okay, and I'm going to attach these as well. And I'm gonna put a little more glue along here. Should be able to get it all in there. Tuck those last couple strays in. I'm gonna run a line of hot glue back here to kind of hold it all. And the last step is going to be putting the fringe on. Okay, so to make the tassels, you will actually make them and then attach them on. So I'm gonna show you how to make one on the tutorial, and then I'll finish up making several to put on here, and then I'll show you how to attach them. So again, like I said, I'm going to use a color that is in this, so I could stick with all one, or I could combine them. So again, I have like a gold, kind of a mint green, this fuchsia, a blue, and that's it. And then obviously the background is this purple. So I'm gonna use these 4 colors to make the tassels. I'm probably going to need 12 or so to fill this up to make it really full. So depending on how long you want your tassels, this is really a pretty simple process. You just are going to take something, this is a piece of chipboard, so it's like thick cardboard. But if you can find anything that is about the length that you like for your tassel that you could wrap yarn around, that's essentially what you need. And what you're gonna do to start is you're going to cut a piece about 8 to 12 inches long and just lay it on let me move this out of the way. Just lay it on the cardboard like that. And then you're going to start wrapping your yarn, and I still have it on the spool, so I have not cut any off of the ball of yarn there. And I'm just going to wrap, you can do it pretty quickly, around. And it's kind of up to you how many times you want to wrap it. It's dependent on how full you want your tassel to be. So I'm gonna do it about 30 times or so, like that. And then I'm going to trim it off. So right now I have my little string like this that I tucked in to begin, and I wrapped it around about 30 times and cut it. Very simple. From here, all you need to do is scoot that initial piece of yarn that you put in the or laid across the board, scoot it up to the top, not all the way, but pretty close. And you're going to tie it. So I'm going to tie it once and one more time to hold it, like that. Then what I'm going to do is stick my scissors under the yarn, and I'm going to trim it off. So right now I have this. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take those two pieces that I tied. I'm going to keep track of those. Fold your yarn, your tassel over, and you're just going to tie it completely around. So let me explain that a little more. Pulling these two pieces out. These are my tie pieces. One here and one here. Okay. So I'm folding the tassel over so that the ends meet, and I'm just going to wrap the yarn around and tie it. Again, the tassels are optional. I'm sure many of you know how to make a tassel a different way that you think is easier, and by all means you can certainly do that. But when my students work with suede, this is what we have found to be the best. So we're just going to carry it over to the yarn as well. So I'm just tying it like 3 times. Just like that. I'm going to trim this off. Okay, so now I have a little tassel, and I want to trim the bottom so that it's all even. I could always just trim it at the end if I wanted to connect them all, which I will actually do. So once I go back and attach the tassel, I'll trim them all just to make sure that that bottom is really even. So I am going to continue making probably 10 to 12 of these total. And when I return, I will show you how to attach the tassels, how to finish up the top so that you have a string, and then we will be wrapped up. And I will point out this dowel rod is a little bit longer than what I want, so when I return, you'll see I'm going to cut it down a little bit. I only want about 1 inch sticking out, so I'm going to use a little saw and trim those down. So when I return, we will wrap this up. Okay, so we are now ready to attach the tassels. As you can see, I ended up making 9 of them. Had I made them a little smaller, I probably would have fit 10 to 12 on here, but I think 9 is sufficient. So what I'm going to do is attach them using the original yarn that I started with, because I'm attaching them to the bottom, and I do want it to kind of blend in with this color. So I'm going to use that more plum kind of purple there. And I'm going to grab my larger needle. So this is a needle with, you know, the larger eye. And I'm going to put some yarn onto the needle. And just tie a little knot just to hold it onto the needle. And then basically we're just gonna attach each tassel individually, kind of sewing it on. I'm leaving these long right now because if I cut them really short, they're most likely going to stick out through the tassels, and I don't want that. Right now they should kind of hide behind these longer tassels. So to attach them, I want to make sure that I keep them pretty evenly spaced. I want this pink one to be in the middle, and then you can see the pattern it's kind of a mirror image that will go out from there. So I'm gonna start on this side. I could start in the middle and work my way one way and the other, but I think it's just as easy to do this. So what I'm gonna do is take my yarn and cut 3 or 4 feet off. You don't need much. So I'm going to poke through just kind of the, near the bottom. I don't want it to come all the way out. I need to leave 3 or 4 inches like that, and then I'm just gonna poke, back from the front to the back like this and pull it. And then I'm going to make a knot so that this this strand of yarn stays in place. Just like that. Okay, now I'm ready to start attaching the tassels. And the way we're gonna do this is, depending on where you want, each one to go, you would just kind of, again, poke through there. It's not necessarily necessary that you do it on this first one since you're already attached. Like that. And then I'm going to get my scissors out of the way, take my first tassel, and I'm gonna go right through all those loops that are on there and pull like that. And then I'm going to go back through my yarn, or my, weaving here again. So I went through and back, through the tassel, and then just a little bit over, about 1/2 inch, I poked through the tapestry there again. Okay, now I'm ready for the next one, which again, I'm trying to make sure that I kind of keep in mind how much these need to be spaced based on how many I have. So these are gonna be kind of like that. So I'm leaving a little bit of a space, going to poke through this again. Try to keep everything out of the way. You have to be very aware as you're doing this, or it can get kind of crazy. So this I would not say this is necessarily a beginner's type. I don't want to say the whole project, but at least this part of it. This can get a little confusing. Craftsmanship's really important here. So again, I'm going through the tassel and then back through the tapestry. Making sure I don't get anything tangled or crazy. I don't want the tassel getting caught in there, anything like that. Okay, now we're ready for the next one. I'm gonna do one more and then I'll kind of skip forward again, so you don't have to watch me do all of this. So leaving a little space, poking through here, being very careful not to get my tassel caught in it. Like that, through the tassel. Okay, and then back through the tapestry again. Okay, so I have 6 more of these to attach. I'm gonna do that, and then I'll tie off the end, and then I'll secure a string to the top. So as soon as I return, I'll show you how to put a string on the top, and then we will call it done. All right, tassels are attached. I'm going to just tie the string off on the side over here. Make a couple knots, just kind of poking through the edge. And before I pull it all the way through, if I wrap my yarn around it, it will make a little knot like that. Okay, trim that. And I'm going to kind of brush these out a little bit and trim the tassels so that they are even. So I'm kind of combing them so that there aren't any little pieces stuck like that. And then I want them to be straight across. So I noticed that this one is pretty short, so I need to cut all the other ones that length. And I think I cut them a little bit, maybe slightly diagonal. I think that's good. These are sticking out a little bit. Okay, so last thing to do, this is definitely a long project, is to attach the string to the top. So we're going to, you could do this one of several ways, and one being you could drill a hole into each side of the dowel and run your string through that way. We are going to keep it simple, and I'm just going to tie the string on because this is a complicated enough project, so let's keep it fairly easy. Depending on how far you want this to hang down from your hook, that would determine how long to make this part here. Trim off the extra. And we'll put one on this side. Tie it over here as well. And trim this one. And there we go. Done. So, few things again to point out. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm very aware that this color is different. That is, you know, this was first time doing this particular type of project. And I'm making it for students in another teacher's class. So, you know, I'm just kind of learning some things as well as I was doing it. The size of the thread or the size of the yarn will certainly affect how long it takes you to create this. So if you go with really skinny yarn, it's going to take a very long time. So just keep that in mind. The tassels are not necessary, but they are, I think, just a nice way to finish the end of it, as is the dowel. That is not necessary either. But again, just, you know, nice way to have something to attach the tapestry to. So that is it for this tutorial. If you liked what you saw, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our channel. And as always, if you have any questions, just drop a comment below. Thanks for watching, guys.